Here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock. I'm Michelle Dewbs and this is Dewbs & Co, the show where we'll get into some of the things that have got you talking. Now today, it's been called Walk Out Wednesday. Not for us troopers though. We've managed to get ourselves into work, but 500,000 other people didn't do so. Strikes I speak about, of course. Everywhere, again, no let up in sight. Is the government doing enough? Is it time now for them to relent and basically say, you know what, whatever you want, you can have it. Let's just stop the strikes. I want your thoughts on that. And apparently, rumours are afoot that there has been a deal reached with the EU when it comes to the Northern Ireland Protocol. Is it true? Is that going to be the end of it? Can we finally all then move on from Brexit? Or will there be a catch? Your thoughts? And ULEZ, what do you think to this? Are you someone that will be affected by it? It's the latest scheme of many, isn't it? That many people call the war on cars. Are you caught up in this? And I saw a scheme the other day, it wasn't the ULEZ, but something similar, which basically was saying that unless you live in the council tax borough, you won't be able to take a shortcut through various side streets. If you do, you'll get a fine. What do you make to that? This kind of whole ownership of these roads all of a sudden with penalties for the rest of us. Do you support it or not? And the police, they seem to be asked to do absolutely everything these days, don't they? But when it comes to things like sitting with a patient, prisoner, whatever, in places like NHS A&Es or wards, how much time do you think the police should be dedicating? There's a force now that want to bill the NHS for wasting their time, basically. Are you in favour of that or not? Before we get into it all, though, let's bring ourselves up to speed, shall we, with tonight's latest headlines.
Well, as you've been hearing, hundreds of thousands of workers have been taking part today in Walkout Wednesday, the UK's biggest day of industrial action in more than a decade. Up to 500,000 people across 7 trade unions went on strike over pay, jobs and conditions. Teachers took part in the action, along with Border Force officials and bus and train drivers, which caused some travel disruption. The Education Minister, Nick Gibb, has described the strikes as disruptive.
It is disappointing that the NEU, one of those 4 unions, has taken strike action today, jeopardising children's education. They've already suffered 2 years of interruption during the COVID pandemic, so this is the last thing children need, and it's the last thing parents need. So I say, look, let's talk, let's continue those talks about these important issues.
Well, Kevin Courtney, the General Secretary of the National Education Union, says the government needs to find the money to pay for pay rises.
They never thought we'd reach these thresholds. They weren't planning on us reaching them. And since we've reached the thresholds, 40,000 more people have joined the union as well. So it does show there's a huge strength of feeling in the profession that government must act and put things right. I think Gillian Keegan is hoping that the strike won't be effective and there won't be any further action. There could be further action. She needs to do a deal so that that doesn't happen.
Meanwhile, the Trades Union Congress has handed a petition to Downing Street today opposing the government's plans for a new law on minimum levels of service during strikes. The petition against the bill was signed by more than 200,000 members of the public. The government says it'll continue to hold talks with unions. Now, it's been confirmed that 4-year-old Alice Stones, who died in a dog attack in Milton Keynes, was killed by a family pet. Thames Valley Police has described this as a tragic and isolated incident. No arrests have been made, and Superintendent Mark Tarbett says they're now working to establish the breed of the dog.
We currently believe that this was a tragic, isolated incident and there is no threat to the wider community. Accordingly, no arrests have been made at this time. I can confirm that the dog was a family pet and was put down by police at the scene yesterday evening. And part of the investigation is to establish the breed of that dog. While our investigation takes place, there will be more officers in the area over the coming days.
A failed asylum seeker from Iran has been detained indefinitely for killing an 87-year-old woman at her North Yorkshire home. Shaheen Darvish Narendbom befriended Brenda Blaney and lived with her in Thornton-le-Dale. He went on to strangle the pensioner and stab her in January last year. It's understood his asylum claim was refused in 2017, but he couldn't be removed from the UK because there wasn't a deportation agreement in place with Iran. Now, Boris Johnson has been urging Western leaders to further boost their support for Ukraine. Speaking in Washington today, he told senior politicians that President Volodymyr Zelensky should be given all the equipment he needs. He's asked them to supply fighter jets, which Downing Street has so far refused to do.
So God bless America for having the guts and the wisdom to help. And I implore you now to follow the logic of what you are all doing and give the Ukrainians the tools to finish the job. Give them the deep fire artillery systems, give them the tanks, give them the planes, because they have a plan. They know what they need to do, and my God, they've shown they have the skill and the bravery to do it.
Well, staying in the United States, the FBI is searching President Joe Biden's beach house in Delaware as part of an ongoing investigation into his handling of classified documents. His lawyer says the operation was carried out with the consent of Biden's legal team. The FBI searched one of Biden's homes in Delaware last month after his team found classified documents there. His former private office was also searched in November. Here, house prices have fallen for the 5th month in a row, down by 0.6% on December. Nationwide's house price index shows the average home now costs just over £258,000. Annual price growth slowed to 1.1% in January, and that comes as the Bank of England is poised to raise interest rates for the 10th consecutive time. That's the news. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Back now to Dewbs & Co.
Thanks for that, Polly. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening. Alongside me, Kevin Craig is the former Labour councillor and the CEO of PLMR Communications, and Ben Habib is the Chief Executive of First Property Group and former Brexit Party MEP. And Housewife's favourite, Ben Habib. Remember, if you're a regular viewer...
I'm not winking.
Well, if you're a regular viewer to this programme, you will remember that I think it was last week we did play Ben's wink. If I had my way, I'd do it every single time you're on, but it might get a bit tired. I was trying to convince Kevin Craig in the intro to the show, asking him whether or not he wants to do a wink.
I don't think he should be allowed on the show until he's winked at the camera.
Okay, that's all yours, Ben.
Yeah, he's not having it.
All yours, Ben.
Having none of it.
Oh.
You are very much a housewife's favourite, though. You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. That would be a good idea. In fact, we could do like a. You could do like a dual.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know. Yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up and get on with what I'm supposed to be talking about? Hey, by the way, did you see that Boris Johnson story in the headlines there? What do you make to all of this Boris Johnson stuff with Ukraine? If I was Rishi Sunak, I'm not actually sure I'd appreciate Boris Johnson getting involved to this extent to me. It would feel like he's trying to undermine me. And this whole talk of fighter jets, what do you think? Should the UK be sending fighter jets to Ukraine? It makes me worry because I feel like we're almost blindly kind of heading into involving ourselves in a full-on war at this rate. And if you think you've got problems in this country now, you wouldn't have seen the half of it. Maybe I'm in the wrong there. Give me your thoughts. Coming up tonight, of course, I will be talking about Walkout Wednesday, Northern Ireland Protocol. I want to talk to you about the police as well. Should they be fining the NHS, basically, for wasting their time? And ULEZ as well. Are you going to be affected by one of these charges? And what do you make, anyway, to this sudden desire from all of these councils to act like they are suddenly owners of these roads and woe betide anyone that drives on them if they don't define that you are allowed to be on there? It feels a little bit like a power grab too far to me. Give me your thoughts, GBViews at gbnews.uk is my email. You can tweet me, as per usual, at GBNews or at Michelle Dewbs. Lots of you are in touch today telling me I look like a leprechaun. Steve says, am I going to a fancy dress party tonight? No, I'm not, Steve, actually. But in hindsight, I perhaps dressed for it because we are getting into the Northern Ireland Protocol a bit later on in the show, but not yet, because before we do so, I want to talk about Walkout Wednesday. We've not been affected by that, us troopers. We've got here. We've managed to dodge the strikes, the disruption. And we're here to tell you what's going on and what should be going on, because pretty much, I always say this, pretty much everyone's on strike, but they really are. You've got teachers, civil servants, bus drivers, university lecturers, you've got some people in the border force. It really does go on and on. 500,000 people on strike right now. Kevin, Craig, I'll start with you. Labour's having a field day today. I mean, this is their Christmas has come at once because this reflects incredibly badly on the Tories. But what do you think should be done about all this?
A settlement needs to be found, Michelle, and the government needs to be flexible and generous and improve how it deals with trade unions. Labour having a field day, nobody sensible or grown up would relish these strikes and the disruption that they bring. But look how many education secretaries we've had in recent years. This government's been it doesn't do governing very well.
You don't think that, honestly, you don't think that people in the Labour Party are really quite pleased about this on one level because it's putting the Tories in a bad light, it's bringing the country in lots of parts and places to its knees, that is good political capital for them?
Yeah, but one of the things I like about Keir Starmer is a proper grown-up, and he doesn't relish people going through pain, even if it's politically expedient. He's much more of a serious person than that. So,
do you think people should be on the picket lines, MPs, etc.?
No, we talked about it on here before. I mean, it's up to, to Keir to set the tone that he wants as leader of the Labour Party, and he is very clear what the government's got wrong. They don't negotiate very well with the unions. Too many education secretaries. The pay rises they proposed, 5% this year, fine, but over time teacher salaries have gone down. Most of the teachers I talk to in the state sector, they work many more hours than they get paid for. Their morale's going through the floor, and also the pay rises that have been proposed, the way that they're being found is very difficult for schools. So nothing that the government's doing on this is right, I'm afraid, and look where we are.
Well, yeah, look where we are indeed. Ben Habib, what do you
Well, I mean, I completely agree with Kevin that the government is not very good at governing. And we have a public sector, I loathe the word crisis, but we have a public sector crisis right across every public sector. And that's after 13 years of borrowing to the hilt and taxing us to the hilt. So that if they're not short of cash, it's not a cash issue, it is a governance issue. And we locked down. I don't want to go into a big discussion on lockdown, but we locked down. We allowed supply chains to get broken, oil refineries to be shut down, container ships to be at the wrong parts of the globe at the time that we unlocked, and so on and so forth. And we entered an inflationary spike as we came out of lockdown. And government really had to have some joined-up thinking on how it was going to deal with this. And my real criticism of the government is that it saw these strikes coming back in summer. They were well flagged. The teachers threatened striking. University staff threatened it. Barristers threatened it. The rail strikers were first out of the traps, if you like. and the nurses threatened it. And remember, they've never been on strike before, but the government didn't move to head it off.
Some nurses have been on strike before, but you've not had a national strike to this extent before, have we?
Well, we haven't had nurses on strike ever. The Royal College of Nurses has never been on strike. This is the first strike ever for them.
There was some nurses. I want to say Northern Ireland, but maybe I might be wrong in my facts there. You will.
Well, you can fact check it. But anyway, it's a problem, and the government hasn't got ahead of it. And now, actually, the right thing to do is solve the problem. And they've got to get round a table, they've got to negotiate, and if there are ways to ameliorate increases in salary by giving benefits in other non-monetary ways so that they don't get a feared second spike in inflation, which, by the way, I don't think they will, because to the extent that people are paid more money, this is not going to be used to buy discretionary consumer goods. It's going to be used to pay their heating and pay for their food. I mean, people are really having to make hard choices between heating and eating at the moment, and that's not a good choice in a first world country. But on teachers, you know, funnily enough, I've got the least sympathy for teachers, because teachers were out at the front championing lockdowns, refusing to come into work, making their and fearing contamination from their children, making the children wear masks when they shouldn't have been wearing masks, shutting down social interaction between children. And it was lockdowns, in my opinion, that created the inflationary spike that's really kicked the teachers in the shins. So I think they need to do some introspection as well in the way that they handle themselves.
I mean, I would say, in defence of many teachers, actually, their actions during the lockdown were governed by child welfare. There were big concerns about infections being passed on to elderly relatives. And lockdowns, as many of us know, were a necessary part of coming through the pandemic. So there are very different views, again, held around this table. But to blame teachers for lockdowns, I didn't blame.
I just said they were out there, up front and centre, arguing. The unions were arguing in favour of lockdown.
But they were doing it, I would contend, for very honourable and valid reasons, which I think the three of us disagree about.
I think that's a very polite way of putting it. I think
I'm trying really hard.
I know, yeah. It's only because, in case you're wondering, last time these two was on and they went, you was debating Brexit. We didn't have a great, how do I put it? It wasn't great. So
it was great.
Yeah, well, anyway.
We enjoyed it.
We're going to come on to Brexit in a minute, so we'll touch on that. You say settlement, right? So many of these people are asking for above inflation pay rises. Do you think that's reasonable?
I do think it's reasonable because of the context. You know, Ben actually talked about where increases in pay will be spent. 16.7% food price increases we heard on this channel today. 750,000 households across the UK at risk of mortgage default. Many of these people are teachers, and they're not. Teachers and their unions, believe it or not, many of these unions now are quite modern organisations. They're not doing it for the fun of it or to cause havoc. It really is that over time, the teachers have been subject to pay decreases. That's the reality.
Do you think there's an element of this because in various places union membership is on the decline, the unions are not as powerful as they once were in this country? Do you think, or do you worry perhaps there is an element of the unions trying to re-establish and regroup their power?
No, I don't think so. I can see why you would ask that. I mean, I think all of us are aware of the history of Britain and the industrial disputes, particularly in the 1970s, where Labour was perceived to have lost control of governing. I don't believe so. You know, I'll declare it.
I think there are hints of it, aren't there, Kevin, with the RMT? I feel Mick Lynch and his deputy, whose name escapes me at the moment, but his deputy is quite a sort of strident. You know, if you had him in the 1970s, you'd describe him as a sort of pinko commie subversive.
Well, the RMT are not currently affiliated to the Labour Party, so Mick paddles his own canoe. You know.
Did you just say you're a member of the GMB as well?
Yeah.
And they are affiliated to the Labour Party, aren't they? What do you think to this? Do you think there's any element of kind of political capital being trying to be achieved here?
No. I mean, the Labour Party...
Honestly, not at all.
Yeah, I mean...
I heard Mick Lynch today, and I know we just said that RMT is not linked to the Labour Party, but he was saying... basically, he's, rising of the working class, and he was saying, we basically demand and we are united. We won't be divided on the basis of who we work for. So this whole kind of notion of coordination and bringing this together. What other benefit is there in coordinating strikes cross-sector, cross-union, if it's not for political capital?
Well, I think it's political progress. People want their voices heard. There is a common sentiment in the public sector and in many unions that the country is going to the dogs because of its political leadership. Now, not everybody watching and listening tonight will agree with that, right? But they think nothing works properly, it's badly run, and they think the way the Conservative Party governs, that they waste billions of pounds when it suits them and their mates, and then they can't find it for public sector salaries. That is a summary of what a lot of people feel.
Yeah,
and rightly so.
I saw some pictures today and they made me feel really uncomfortable, actually. Loads of kids. I saw one picture of a kid with a sign saying, tax the rich, fair pay for workers, tax the rich. And I don't know, it made me feel like a little bit... I don't know, what did it make me feel? It made my bum clench a little bit. It made me I'm trying to eloquently describe how it made me feel.
Yeah, well, it's
the
politics of envy. It's politics of division, and that's going to be inculcated. You know, if people can't afford to heat or eat, they will start attacking what they regard as those who are better off, and that's bound to happen. And it's not the way forward.
No, it's not. And you're right, Ben. You know, I think all of us active in wherever, public sector, private sector, in politics, you know, its aspiration is great. You know,
it's critical.
It's critical.
Aspiration is critical.
And it should be great. Most working class people I grew up with and know want better things for their kids than they had, and that's great. So if you end up becoming rich, that's also great. And when you get rich, you pay more taxes for the country you love. Easy.
Well, keep your thoughts coming in. So many of you have been in touch. Let's have a look at some of them, shall we? Maurice says, why do all these strikers and union leaders refer to their behaviour as industrial action? Surely it should be known more as industrial inaction. I've got to say, I thought that, you know, when I saw lots of the civil servants out on the picket lines and stuff, they'll be back to work tomorrow from their bedrooms or wherever it is that they're working tomorrow. It did make me feel a bit strange. Anyway, Graham says the government needs to take a firmer stance, get back to work. Well, you say get back to war. I think you mean work. Or lose your jobs, you say. Richard, the strikes will fail and infighting will begin soon. All the government needs to do is hold firm and common sense will win. Lisa said the care staff who are in desperate need of an increase haven't been on strike, and they are the lowest paid. I've got to say as well, not only are they the lowest paid, I would say so many people, they don't seem to hold these care workers in the regard that they certainly should, Lisa.
I mean, can I just interrupt there? I understand the sentiment about the government staying firm and making sure people come back to work and strikes end. But I think where that ends up eventually is a third world economy, because people are going to be... We're going to have loads of unskilled labour. They won't be investing in businesses. They won't be moving forward with the aspiration that they need to move forward in order for the country to progress. I can see the temptation to just hold firm, but I think it's deeply damaging to the psyche of the country.
I'll just do a couple more of your thoughts. Jeanette. No, it's fine. Jeanette says, I'm a teacher, but I haven't been out on strike. I was dismayed to see placards saying pay up because all colleagues I speak to are not bothered about pay. They are more bothered about conditions. But Stuart says the only way to resolve these wage demands in the public sector is to give them a 10% increase and reduce their employers' pension contributions by 10%. Obviously, if you do that, Stuart, you'll have things like national insurance contributions and things like that to pay on those salaries. But would you be happy if you are someone that's on strike, if that Stuart's suggestion was to take hold? So, yes, you can have your pay rise, but we'll take it off you at the other end, coming out of your pensions. Would that wash with you? Quick break. When we come back, we're going to have a boxing match, also known as Kevin and Ben debating Brexit, the Northern Ireland Protocol. Apparently, almost done and dusted. A deal perhaps has been reached. Has it? Will it work? Or will this rumble on and on? Your thoughts? I'll see you in 2.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you.
Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not
believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewbs and I'm keeping you company until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got Kevin Craig, the former Labour councillor and the CEO of PLMR Communications, and Ben Habib is Chief Exec of First Property Group and a former Brexit Party MEP. Britain's best business brains, that's what you two are. You're among the two, aren't you? You're among the two top business brains. That's what I like to think. Owen, you've been in touch. You were saying public servants should sign an employment contract against striking and then agree an independent survey process into remuneration for their jobs. Don't forget, though, Owen, one of the problems at the moment is this whole kind of minimum service levels that people are up in arms about at the moment. So, I mean, if they can't even get some of that over the line, how do you propose that they would get, basically a clause saying that they can't strike over the line? Les says union leaders are just causing harm to their own members. Why don't you wait till inflation is down to 3% and then match their pay increases with that? But what do you do in the meantime, though, Les? Because these workers will say that they can't afford to live in the here and the now. Ken, when will the strikers realise the union bosses' wages? When will the strikers realise they pay the union bosses' wages, giving them top-door clothing, fast cars and second homes? If they didn't pay those fees, though, they wouldn't be represented, though, Ken, by the union. So what would they do then? You tell me. Let's talk Brexit, shall we? Apparently, there's been a deal agreed with Brussels to resolve the Northern Ireland Protocol. I'm going to just get straight into this, Ben, because a lot of people watching this, they might not live in Northern Ireland. They might live in, Wolverhampton. They're sitting there and they're saying, this Northern Ireland Protocol
and
thing,
they're rolling their eyes at it.
Around it.
Yeah.
Like, why would I be concerned? What would you say to them?
OK, so as I'm sure you know, Michelle, and lots of viewers will know, I've been fighting the Northern Ireland Protocol from the beginning. And it's not because I have now developed a particular love for Northern Ireland, but actually when I started this campaign against the protocol, it wasn't because of any particular love of Northern Ireland. It was because I could see it was going to be used to damage the United Kingdom. And that's what it's done. And this is what people in Great Britain, as distinct from Northern Ireland, need to understand. Northern Ireland has been left behind in the EU single market for goods. So there's a regulatory border down the Irish Sea. That means that if Great Britain wishes to deviate from EU law, that border will become increasingly more obvious. So to give you a very tangible example, yesterday there was a lot of chat about Brexit and how things hadn't really been done with Brexit, how we hadn't taken advantage of it. And Nigel on his show opened by saying, one of the simplest things the government could have done, and is pertinent in the cost of living crisis, is cut the 5% tax on fuel duty that the fuel duty that we pay for home fuel. But we can't do that. Because if we did cut that tax, Northern Irish would still be paying it under the terms of the protocol, and people in Great Britain would be better off, and demonstrably the protocol would be damaging Northern Ireland. Rishi Sunak got up in the Commons a few months ago and said he can't cut VAT in Great Britain because of the Northern Ireland Protocol. And it doesn't stop there. there's a whole host of regulatory aspects associated with the protocol that prevent us.
When you say he can't cut VAT because of the Northern Ireland Protocol, is it can or is it doesn't want to because he doesn't want to create a point of difference between...
Because he doesn't want to create a point of difference. He can cut it in Great Britain.
Yeah, so he can technically do it, but he's choosing not to.
But he can't do it in Northern Ireland, and he's choosing not to. And that problem applies to a whole host of regulations. So one of the reasons we haven't ditched lots of EU law is because we don't want to deviate from the EU because it'll show up that regulatory border down the Irish Sea. And that is precisely how the EU wanted the protocol to work, to hold Britain, to hold the United Kingdom close through Northern Ireland. It's a gaff, if you know what I mean by a gaff, which is that really brutal fishing instrument you use to get, you know, hook a large fish when it's up by the side of your boat. You get it into the flesh of the fish and you pull it out. And that's what the protocol is. So if anyone in Great Britain thinks it's not an issue for them, it's a huge issue. And the other point I just want to make, and it's an emotive point, but it's a very important one. What kind of country are we if we are going to leave behind 1.8 million people in Northern Ireland subject to foreign laws made by a foreign parliament, a foreign government, and enforced by a foreign court? That is literally a breach of human rights.
Sensible stuff there, Kevin Craig. Do you agree with him?
No, I don't. I don't. And I don't. And I think what's needed in Northern Ireland is the compromise, flexibility and mutual understanding that has characterised the peace process since the Good Friday Agreement. Now, for full transparency, which Ben won't mind, you know, I'm a British citizen, an Irish citizen. I'm proud and I love both countries, right? Ben, you know, you're very much aligned with this traditional, what are they called, traditional unionist voice party. You've donated to them. You do a lot of campaigning on Brexit with my very good friend, although I don't share her politics, Lady Kate Hoey. But people who are not as immersed in it, in Northern Ireland, there isn't unanimity about how people feel about the protocol. I thought the Irish Taoiseach, the Irish Prime Minister, was really conciliatory a few days ago. He said he understands, and I understand actually, why in the unionist community there is anger and uncertainty caused by the protocol. They feel when it was agreed, there wasn't a functioning executive in Northern Ireland, so they feel upset about that. On the positive side, the Northern Irish economy is outperforming the economy of our country as a whole. There is no hard border, OK? There is no hard border in the sense that many people understand it. And the Prime Minister, well, we probably do agree, is in a pickle because he would love to compromise, I think, but there are many people, for very valid reasons, who share, if you like, Ben's outlook, who think that this risks going too far. I think, and William Hague said it today, there should be compromise, and I think that Northern Ireland only succeeds when people of extreme different views can manage to come together. And the language about foreign governments, well, half the population in Northern Ireland identify more with the Republic of Ireland.
The entire population in Northern Ireland is British.
Ben, half the population of Northern Ireland identify with the Republic of Ireland, right? The Good Friday Agreement agreed in law that if a majority of people ever voted to leave and join the Republic of Ireland, they would. I'm just trying to say we need compromise, and sometimes the tone of the discussions doesn't respect both unionist and nationalist communities.
With the greatest of respect, there should be no compromise on this issue. Northern Ireland is part of the Union of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, part of the United Kingdom. There can be no compromise. You cannot have a foreign. You cannot have a foreign power making laws and adjudicating them in part of the United Kingdom. That is vassalage. That is the annexation of part of the United Kingdom. The Good Friday Agreement is going to be set asunder if they don't ditch the protocol. That is how dangerous this political game is. We're getting into Northern Irish politics, and I wanted to keep this really relevant to people in the United Kingdom as a whole.
But it's all interwoven, I think.
But it is interwoven. It is interwoven. But there can be no excuse for it. There can be no excuse for a foreign power adjudicating part of the United Kingdom. It cannot happen. And overnight, we had this deal that came out. championing the possibility of an invisible trade border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
And this hasn't been confirmed yet, has it?
No, it's just a rumour.
Yeah.
But if you can have an invisible trade border between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, which has 5 times more trade than Northern Ireland to the Republic, you can equally and easily have that invisible trade border on the island where the border already exists and where the Good Friday Agreement recognises a border. And moreover, and I want everyone to look this up if they've got 10 minutes spare, there is a paper produced by the European Union in November 2017 which says a smart border on the island of Ireland is quite feasible, and the customs border could easily have gone there. What's happened is the EU has seen this as a political gaffe, as a political opportunity, and gaff the United Kingdom in its side and hook it and either bring it back or split Northern Ireland off from the United Kingdom. And that is entirely unacceptable to every British citizen in this country. Except you, perhaps, Kevin.
No, I think, Ben, 57% of us in this country don't think Brexit was a good idea as we sit here
We're not talking about Brexit, we're talking about the protocol right now.
But if you attribute characteristics and motives to the European Union, I think we have to be accurate. I don't believe the European Union wants to cause trouble for our government.
That's precisely what it wants to do, Kevin.
It doesn't. The European Union didn't want us to vote leave, but now that we did, it respects that.
No, come on.
It does.
It has made it as difficult as possible.
My good friends, you're hardcore Brexiteers around this table.
It's not about being hardcore or anything. It's about basic common sense. Why would a union, the EU, want to make it easy and seamless for the UK to exit? There's been so many rumours and all the rest of it around other countries trying to separate from the EU. It is surely, and this is common sense, it's not anything about being loyal to Brexit or loyal to Remain, it's basic common sense. It is surely in the interest of the EU to make this process as difficult, as painful and as full of friction as possible to send a message to any other country.
Absolutely.
Never ever consider Brexit, well, it wouldn't be Brexit, but never ever consider leaving the EU, because look at what will happen if you do.
Well,
surely you must concede that.
No, absolutely. I'll tell you why specifically. Number one, Northern Ireland is a place unlike no other in the Union, with its historical, cultural, religious circumstances. And the European Union's leading commissioners' representatives are on the record as saying that they want to try and get a situation that never, ever risks escalating divisions in Northern Ireland, which in any way risk bringing us back to the bad old days. So they do not... Of course they didn't want us to leave, but it's done.
Kevin, why isn't the customs border where the EU said it could quite easily go in the first place? It was only after that EU paper came out that Varadkar then took these incredibly emotive photographs to an EU summit in 2018, showing bombed-out border posts in Northern Ireland. To win the political... He literally weaponised the border issue. And if you talk about destabilising the peace process, that's precisely what the protocol does. It destabilises the peace process.
I think
we've really gone deep into Northern Irish.
We have. I go back to what I said when the first time I was speaking this evening, is that in terms of why it matters to viewers across this country, and I maintain that if this is going to work, there has to be compromise and flexibility.
For which you mean regulatory alignment across the UK. And that's the end of Brexit, and that's what the EU wants. That's the problem.
Got to say, I do agree on that last statement.
Who'd have thought it, Michelle?
I know. Well, that's because, I mean, it absolutely blows my brain that you think that the EU actually want this to be as seamless and as easy and as gentle and as effective and as efficient as possible. I can't get my head around that, and it's not because I'm in the same Brexit camp as Ben. It's about... it just doesn't stack up.
Well, do you think the European Union's done anything of any note or good in its history?
But this country...
Of course. I don't hate the EU, but on balance, I just think that actually this country would be better served being an independent nation. It doesn't mean that I hate Europe or Europeans or the European Union or anything like that.
This country will not be able to become truly independent and chart a path for its national interest and the interest of British people until it ditches the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Well, never mind this country. This programme won't be able to stay on track if I don't get myself to a break in a second.
Did I mention, Michelle, that 57% of people currently... I'm not suggesting we do.
You did mention your 57%.
Right? We have to give it a chance. Just saying.
Well, you know what, guys? You've heard different perspectives. I'm going to leave it with you at home to make your own mind up what you make of it all. Do you get it, by the way? After all that, do you still get what the Northern Ireland Protocol is, why it would affect you at home, Wolverhampton, Wigan, wherever you are? Give me your thoughts. I'll see you in 2. When I come back, I want to talk to you about ULEZ. Do you have one of these schemes near you? Do you support it? Sadiq Khan loves it in London. Is that the right move forward, though? Give me your thoughts. I'll see you in 2.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV
Surprised
with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes.
Oh, good.
Already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Every weekend, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Bigger and better, starting at 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday.
Can't be too safe. Bring it on. Has there ever been a more innuendo feature?
And Sundays, we're on at 9.
It's ridiculous.
Just get on with it. Maybe you should get a proper job.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewbs, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Dewbs and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewbs, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7 o'clock this evening, Kevin Craig, the former Labour councillor and CEO of PLMR Communications, and Ben Habib, the chief exec of First Property Group and former Brexit Party MEP, both keep me company until 7 o'clock with you. Ian says we can't move on with Brexit until we're fully out of any EU control. Remoaners always blame our woes on Brexit. They cannot accept the democratic mandate. I do say this often. I don't use that term, Remoaners. I did then because you used it yourself and I'm reading you out, but I just don't think it's helpful to call the other side names. I think we need to try and move on in a positive manner.
Well said,
Maybe I'm
Michelle.
just deluding myself.
Well, it is tempting.
Yeah, it is tempting, but I think in
That's it, I'm making a joke, Kevin.
in life, I just think we all disagree, don't we? But I like to respectfully disagree. And I think when we get down to the level of name calling, I think we've almost kind of lost the argument at that point. Barry says, if you are coming to a deal on the Northern Ireland Protocol, you can guarantee our Remainer government will make sure it favours to the EU 100%. Won't Richard Brexit here? Peter says Northern Ireland should become independent and then apply back to join the UK, done and dusted. Darren says, no matter how this government sells this deal, the Unionists will never accept it. And Carol says, thank you, Ben. From someone living in Northern Ireland, it's great to hear that we are still considered British. There you go. Into that. So let's talk ULEZ, shall we? Do you have one of these schemes? These are the low-emission schemes that are popping up everywhere, often under different names. But in London, ULEZ is the one we go by. Sadiq Khan, basically, he's expanding them, getting a lot of criticism. Now he's basically saying that the people that oppose these schemes are very similar to the people that once upon a time criticised the smoking ban. Let's get straight to the chase on this one, Ben Habib. Do you support these ULEZ schemes or not?
Completely against them. It's a tax on the working and middle classes at a time that they can least afford it.
Oh. Kevin?
I am in favour of what Sadiq's trying to do. We should, and there are plans for exemptions for people on lower incomes and benefits. But the reality is the air in our capital and indeed elsewhere is killing people. And Public Health England estimating that could be over the next 15 years, 2.5 million cases of coronary heart disease, strokes, lung cancer because of air quality. Now, I just think it's a real issue. But it's not that one should relish any increase in charges or anything that causes pain, but Sadiq's got a big scheme that he's putting in to give people financial redress if they have to change vehicles, a scrappage scheme.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I understand people's frustrations, you know, and sometimes you feel like local authorities are making your life difficult to try and get around. I totally understand that, but air pollution in our capital is dreadful.
Well, that's not right, actually, Kevin. It's not right. And I did send a screenshot through to the...
Hang on. Producer, can I load the pollution picture? There you go. Talk us through what we're seeing.
So what you see there is a picture of Greater London, which is where he wants to impose the expanded ULEZ. And blue is basically very good air quality. Everything up to yellow is perfectly acceptable air quality. So it goes blue, green, yellow is acceptable. And it's only the very inner part of London. I'm not sure if viewers can see exactly where that is.
Straight in. So just so you're clear, this is a static. So this is a live. You can look at this live online any moment you want.
And it's put out by TfL, by the way.
Yeah.
This map's put out by TfL.
The website is on the top right if you're watching. If you're not watching, it is londonair.org.uk. We've got a static image there, hence I can't zoom into it, but I just took that picture before we came on air, so that was kind of, if you like, rush hour.
Yeah, so there's no real case to be charging people in this expanded area to, you know, try and reduce emissions. Emissions are perfectly under control. And the other point I'd make, there's just a couple of other points.
Though?
Well, I mean,
saying in public that
that's a map. That is a map.
That's one map. You've whistled that. I don't know whether
that's a TfL put out map.
What time of day? What's the background
to it? It was just before we came on air.
It's average emissions across the year. Look it up, Kevin, honestly. So, but the other point I'd make is there's nothing worse for carbon emissions and nitrous oxide than cars sitting around ambling. And with all the restrictions that Sadiq Khan has put in place in central London, you can't get around anymore without sitting in traffic for ages. One of the problems we've got in central London is cars sitting around ambling, creating nitrous oxide. And then the third point I'd like to make, actually, is at the same time as taxing people for using their vehicles, he's taxing us. He's increasing costs at TfL across the board. So even before the inflationary spike, TfL charges went up by 5% in 2022, and now he's putting them up by another 6%. So that's an 11% increase using public transport. And I renewed my Boris bike annual thing that I'm a member of. Last year, it cost me 90 quid to be a member of Boris Bike for a year. This time around, it was 120 quid. That's a 33% increase. And that's about as friendly as it gets. Why isn't he using some of this ULEZ income to make Boris bikes free?
If you're not in London, by the way, you don't know what he's on about. A Boris bike is basically those rental schemes where you've got bikes dotted around there in cities up and down the country now. So bikes dotted around, you use your smartphone or your card, whatever, you take one for half an hour or whatever, and off you go. I'd love to see you on that, by the way.
Yeah, well, it's a cycle scheme instigated by Ken Livingstone that Boris very carefully appropriated, which is typical of him.
And I agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
Okay. I agree with, but we do call him Boris Bike.
Okay, but the look. We disagree that there is an emergency over air quality in London, so we're just going to have to agree to disagree on that. And you know, on the good side, and actually I do give some credit to Boris Johnson, cycling in London is better than it's ever been. Right, there are more people using bikes, and there's some real progress made. Much of London was built before the car was invented. Okay, that's our trouble. Okay, there was a report out in recent weeks. I'm sure you're aware of it. London is one of the most congested cities on Earth, okay?
Because he shut all the roads.
Yes, but if we just have to accept that higher polluting vehicles we just can't carry on as we are. Those of us who think there is an air quality issue in London don't think that things can carry on. Ultimately, Sadiq Khan will get this tested at the ballot box.
Well, yeah. This scrappage scheme, by the way, £110 million. That's what we've just been referring to. You can get grants up to about £2,000 if you've got a non-compliant vehicle. And just to be clear, this is not a London issue. These kind of schemes are popping up right up and down the country in different guises. Many people saying it's just basically a war on cars, a mechanism for councils to fill their coffers. Which side of the fence are you on? Give me your thoughts. I'll see you back in 2. When I come back, I want to talk to you about the police, a force now, saying that they're going to essentially bill the NHS for wasting their time. Sensible or silly? Your thoughts. See you in 2.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewbs, keeping you company right through till 7. Alongside me, Kevin Craig, the former Labour councillor and the CEO of PLMR Communications, and Ben Habib, the chief exec of First Property Group, former Brexit Party MEP, and as I've just been saying, housewives' favourites. Look out for the 2024 calendar. Right, you guys have been in contact in your droves about some of these topics tonight. On the ULEZ thing, Ray says the people in power have put the mayor in power and now this is what they get. It would be the same if Labour got into government. Well, don't forget, Sadiq Khan is a Labour mayor. Ray Richard said, we've got a motorhome. It passes the emissions test when it's MOT'd. So why can't we go into this, the CZ, is that his name? Not the ULEZ. It's killing towns and cities. Linda says, Michelle, what if you're driving about, you don't know the area and you get lost? How much will that cost us? I suspect a small fortune is the answer to that, Linda. Moral of the story there is don't get lost unless you're absolutely minted. That's what I'd say to you. Let's talk police, shall we? Bedfordshire Police say that they're going to start billing the NHS for the time spent attending, I quote their words, not mine, unnecessary mental health calls. The local police and crime commissioner there says officers are spending 53,000 hours a year dealing with people who've got mental health issues rather than busily fighting crime on the streets. Kevin Craig.
So most people would agree that they don't want police officers spending time as unpaid carers and that they want them out fighting crime, and we've got a crisis of crime in this country. The detail, in my opinion, of what's happening here is that the Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner, for that is his background, is making a song and dance, but the politics are important because you can solve this with good practical agreements, as happened in Humberside. You don't have to go, oh, this is outrageous, our police officers are being, deployed in an ineffective manner, we're going to build the NHS and create scandal and division. What you do is what happened in Humberside, where an agreement was reached between the police and local health authorities. The officers, there was a minimum time, they could not be tied up all night in A&E looking after people, and that's not their job. I have huge sympathy for police forces under budget pressures with not enough officers and all of that, but this is an unnecessary bit of publicity from the Conservative Crime Commissioner for that area, in my opinion.
I do find it fascinating, by the way, that you think that this one is politically motivated, but the strikes somehow are not. But anyway, Ben Habib.
But do you think it's right, Kevin, that the police force is being used as a taxi service for mentally health?
No, and I think that's why the solution in Humberside, where local authorities and health authorities have worked with the police, works, because it can't carry on. It's not right. No.
I mean, if I were the police, I would just refuse to do it. I'd be doing my job. And I think part of the problem...
But hang on, you refuse to do what? So if some guy stood on a bridge, teetering on the edge, obviously a mental health issue, what you would say...
Well, I mean, that's a pretty extreme example. But
it's not.
You're talking about... I mean, there are 53,000 hours worth of suicides in... Those threatened suicides in Bedfordshire. That can't be right.
Well, all right, then I'll change my mind then. So some guy is threatening to beat someone up. He's evidently got a mental health issue.
That's a violent crime.
But he has, I don't know, got some kind of cut or whatever and needs some support in A&E, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, my own take on it is that they're acting as a taxi service for the National Health Service. And I don't think they should be doing that. If you look at crime statistics in Bedfordshire, they're not quite as bad as the increase in crime rates in London, but they're bad. Violence crime is up, drug use is up, armed crime is up, and the police shouldn't be acting as a taxi service. They should be on the streets enforcing the law. And I think there is a breakdown. There's a general breakdown at the top of the police and what the police is all about, And so we've got the police knocking on doors, making sure people during lockdown didn't break curfew or wore a mask when they were in the right place.
They didn't knock on number 10, wasn't it, Ben?
Yeah, it's a shame. They had two bobbies standing outside.
They were looking the wrong way, clearly.
They were looking the wrong way as these suitcases of alcohol went in. But I think the police should just do their job. They should stop painting their cars LGBTQ colours, stop doing the Macarena, stop policing thought, get on the streets and deal with proper crime.
I do find it fascinating that everyone seems to be talking about billing each other, but your average member of the public that is being deeply disrupted at this moment in time, whether it's your parents, you're a parent, you've got your kids at school, you can't go to work if you're a commuter. What about us being able to bill for our inconvenience, for our wasted... I'm serious.
I'm with you. I'm
actually really serious, because ultimately, innocent members of the public, they're just trying to graft, just trying to care for their children. What about compensating us for our lost hours, a.k.a. the police? Anyway, I think I might be deluding myself here, but I think we're ending this programme on a note of agreement between
We are.
the two.
Unanimity, yes.
Well, that's nice.
Wow.
Isn't it? I'm going to film that. I'm going to record that. You never know. I could even move forward. Perhaps I might even get you to do your wink.
Come on, Kevin. You've got to wait. You've got a few seconds.
It doesn't work with a lazy eye. Please move on.
He's not going to do it. I can't wink. I've got glasses and I've got a vision issue. Right. What is this? What are you guys saying very briefly? Let's finish on some of your thoughts, shall we?
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Increasingly cloudy for most of us over the next 24 hours. That cloud bringing some outbreaks of rain in places, but it will also bring milder air with it. The air coming in around an area of high pressure, west to southwesterly winds. And of course, at this time of year, those winds are relatively mild, helped by the fact that a warm front is crossing the UK. That's going to bring a milder spell, but also a lot of cloud and some outbreaks of rain. The rain mainly focused across parts of Scotland, outbreaks of rain on and off through the night. Northern Ireland, likewise, a few spells of rain into Northern England at times. One or two spots couldn't be ruled out for the Welsh mountains, but elsewhere across England and Wales, largely dry, albeit relatively cloudy. And for the vast majority, it is frost-free, although chillier conditions in the far northeast ahead of the rain. That rain does push northeast as we start off Thursday. Wet weather arriving into Shetland and Orkney, but it's persistent.